Good evening. This is the regular City Commission meeting for the City of Largo for Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We do have the entire commission here, although we're spread out a little bit, so you may not see us all on the camera at one time. We're going to start with an invocation, and then please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Father, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today for your many abundant blessings. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. I pray that you would grant this commission wisdom to govern amid conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in our lives and joy in our task. I pray for the agenda set before us this evening. Please give us assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Largo. I also pray for a safe and happy holiday for our employees, our city commission, and all of our Largo residents. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. I usually don't have to lower these things. The first item on the agenda is a ceremonial item. We'd like to welcome the Kiwanis Club.
Good evening. I'm Julie Gonzer, Library Outreach Liaison, and I'd like to introduce Bruce Blaze, did I say it right? From the Kiwanis Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. It's always a pleasure to be back here at Largo to deposit a check for one of the projects of our Kiwanis Club. Largo has had a big history of Kiwanis, which started in 1915 as a networking organization for businessmen. For those of you who are unaware of what Kiwanis does. Kiwanis is focusing on children, and I think the earliest iteration of Kiwanis in Largo came about in the 1930s. Our club, the Kiwanis Club of Largo Mid-Pinellas, is probably the third iteration of Kiwanis in Largo. What we did, Julie helped our club president, Ellie Fox, who found that there's a foundation in California that awards grants to bookmobiles to buy children's books. So the board of directors of the Lois Linsky Covey Foundation is pleased to inform the Largo Mid-Pinellas Kiwanis Foundation has been selected as a recipient of the foundation's 2020 Bookmobile Grant Program. On behalf of the board, I enclose a grant check for $2,000 for purchasing children's books for the Largo Library's Bookmobile. So, Julie? We have a check that, so the commissioners can see it, and we'll go back here for a, we earlier gave, when they started the Bookmobile, Kiwanis, through our foundation, gave the Largo Library Foundation $5,000 to start up the Bookmobile, and here's another $2,000 to help buy children's books.
Thank you.
So use it in a very good way.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you to all of the Kiwanis Club. And we're excited to see you at the Christmas parade this weekend.
And we will be there, and we're looking forward to another Paw Fest in April 10th of 2021.
Very nice. Next item is employees of the quarter.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Here to present the winners of the Employee of the Quarter. First, we have Mary Wintermute, Permit Technician in Community Development. Whereas people seem to get nominated when it's over-the-top crazy, not everyone is the top kitten-saving material. However, in Ms. Wintermute's example, she is loyal, dependable, and always at her post. She stands up for what is right, comes to work every single day, and does not slack off by calling in sick. Mary is also outstandingly dependable. If there is a large project that looks overwhelming to begin, she is always the first to get it started. If Mary is handling a project, I know it will get done to the highest standard. She stands up for fellow employees and in my book deserves a nomination. I have heard when you nominate people for just doing their job, it never gets recognized. However, if that's the case, no one will ever appreciate just doing your job and doing it well. I would like her hard work and loyalty to providing excellent customer service to be recognized. Thank you, Mary. Keep up the good work, and thank you for doing your job well. Next, we have Mark Sherwood, Fire Lieutenant for the Fire Department. A free software used by the county has recently been implemented by the department to replace the software that had an annual maintenance and usage fee. Lieutenant Mark Sherwood spent a lot of time, much of it his own time, to experiment with the new program PS Tracks, to find additional ways to make the software for the department work. Just one example is when a firefighter leaves a department, it leaves an empty seat in the field. These seats are up for grab through a bidding process. Lieutenant Sherwood spent time setting up a test area in the program to accommodate for our bid system. Even though the program is not set up to handle bids, Mark was able to create a space within the program and came up with a way to ensure the success of the bidding process. Mark has worked in conjunction with the county to become an expert and is now teaching field personnel how to effectively use the tools at our disposal. His passion and creativity has been a blessing, and we appreciate his drive and commitment to the City of Largo and Largo Fire Rescue. Mark's efforts are an example of providing superior customer service. Congratulations, Mark. Next, we have Jody White, Housing Finance Specialist in Community Development. Jody has played a vital role in carrying out the city's pandemic resident assistance program since March. This program is outside of the typical scope for Largo's housing division and was activated in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Jody has exemplified collaboration while working with our nonprofit partner agency, the Tampa Bay Community Development Corporation, to carry out the program. During the first round of assistance, Jody was in charge of performing the initial review of new applications. She developed methods to quickly triage the list of applicants to ensure people who were not in the city limits were connected to the appropriate programs offered throughout the county or other jurisdictions, and quickly obtained remaining documents needed to allow clients to proceed with their full applications for assistance. Jody also collaborated with residents by making accommodations for those who could not access the online application or had difficulty uploading documents to help guide them through the application process. There have been several instances where a resident, often a single parent with kids, have received an eviction notice, and Jody was able to contact the landlord and let them know that the check is coming from the city's Residence Assistance Program, which has resulted in the eviction not proceeding. Thank you, Jody, for helping to keep the Largo residents safer at home during this pandemic. Next, we have Kara Peel, Special Events Coordinator for Recreation, Parks, and Arts. As a city special events coordinator, Kara has worked tirelessly to provide the community with needed programs and services. During this last quarter, in addition to her many other responsibilities, she took on the coordination of No Child Left Hungry, a food distribution program which served 1,000 children in the High Point and Lake Villa areas of the city on a weekly basis through a grant provided by the Florida Recreation and Park Association. Kara clearly demonstrates the four values of our city. Her creativity has been tested during the COVID pandemic, which resulted in a number of new or reinvented events: the Howlo Train, Halloween Drive-O-Ween, Restaurant Roundup to support local restaurants, as well as safely offering the popular Movies in the Park and a virtual Veterans Day program. Collaboration may be the defining word for Kara. With only herself and a handful of variable employees, she worked with all divisions across the RPA department as well as numerous city departments to offer well-organized and fun events that showcase Largo as the community of choice in Tampa Bay. Ask anyone who has ever worked with Kara and they will give testimony to her teamwork and collaborative skills. Kara is passionate about the role of special events in supporting the city's strategic vision. She gives 110% to every task she is asked to take on. She routinely volunteers to help others in their event and program planning, demonstrating that teamwork and collaboration is a two-way street. She is the first to arrive, the last to leave, and the first to give credit to the team. In terms of integrity, Kara conducts herself and events in ways that represent our city in a most positive light. She is fair, respectful, and inclusive in all that she plans and manages. She works closely with the city's outreach team to provide services to all community members and will lead the department's efforts to provide a mobile recreation program in designated underserved areas. Especially at this time of the year when the holidays increase her workload exponentially, you'll always see this Energizer bunny with a smile on her face, a kind word for everyone, and a to-do list a mile long. I urge your consideration of this star employee as a worthy recipient of the Employee of the Quarter designation. And last, we have a Manager of the Quarter, Rebecca Spuler, Assistant Finance Director. Among a team of talented and capable individuals, Rebecca is a standout. Put simply, the Workday ERP program would not be where it is currently if it were not for her efforts and embodiment of each of our city's values as exampled below. Integrity, serving the public with honesty, transparency, and according to ethical standards, respecting the worth of others, and doing what is right. Rebecca has pursued optimal implementation best practices while being mindful of change orders as a steward of the Largo community's tax revenue. She respects the worth of others by being incredibly protective of her team members in the finance department, often putting in long hours to prevent them from being overworked. Collaboration, communication, engagement, and teamwork that is inclusive of all of our internal and external partners. Rebecca has been the quintessential example of collaboration, working productively with the project team and other workstream SMEs, her finance department staff, and Collaborative Solutions, which is our external vendor that we're working with. Passion, approaching the job with devotion, enthusiasm, and curiosity, caring about results and enjoying our work. No one can accuse Rebecca of not being devoted. She continues to put in countless hours, including weekends. She would not put in the time if she didn't care about the results. Creativity, innovative thinking that solves problems and improves service delivery. Rebecca has made substantive contributions in nearly every work stream, applying systems thinking methodology across the entire platform, rather than a sliced approach towards developing business process specific to finance. Keep up the good work, Rebecca. And that's it.
Thank you. Next, we have citizens' comment. If you'd like to speak about an item that's on the agenda outside of the consent docket, please wait until that item comes up. Do we have any citizens' comment?
I have no cards, just checking Zoom to see if I have any hands up. No, I do not.
Thank you. Next is approval of tonight's agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next is approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of December 1st, 2020.
Move approval.
Second.
Any changes or corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Could I hear the consent docket, please?
Item 5, authorization to purchase Microsoft migration consulting services from MicroAge through Safari Micro in the amount of $265,000. Item 6, authorization to purchase an annual subscription for the Enterprise Resource Planning System from Workday Incorporated in the estimated amount of $421,343. Item 7, approval of the Pier Point plat. Item 8, approval of the Biltmore Commons plat. Item 9, approval of agreement regarding landscaping and city right-of-way adjacent to 1650 Clearwater Largo Road to be installed and maintained by Alta Bel Air LLC. Item 10, approval of interlocal maintenance agreement with Pinellas County for trail connection improvements to the Fred Marquis Pinellas Trail, and approval of the agreement regarding improvements in Pinellas County right-of-way with the owner of Alta Bel Air Apartments. Item 11, appointment of Andrea Gillot as a member of the Code Enforcement Board. Item 12, authorization to purchase gasoline and diesel fuel utilizing Pinellas County Co-op bid number 190-0360-B for a 5-year period ending December 15, 2025, from Pro Energy LLC for an annual estimated expense of $1,213,400 and a total estimated expense of $6,067,000. Item 13, authorization to settle the lawsuit of Miguel Rivera and Glory Rivera versus the City of Largo in the global amount of $75,000.
Thank you. You've heard the consent docket. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent docket without commission discussion and including staff background provided in the commission packets.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I'd like to thank Andrea Jalot for volunteering to serve on our Code Enforcement Board. It's a very important board, and thank you for being a part of it. Next is item number 14.
Good evening, City Commission and Mayor. This is ordinance number 2020-42, second reading, adopting the Largo Tri-City Special Area Plan. There were minor revisions to page 5 with city staff and project management team acknowledgements, and to page 74 to clarify applicability of the coastal high hazard restrictions. Other than that, there were no changes made. This was recommended approval by the Planning Board August 6, 2020, and approved by City Commission on first reading September 1st, 2020. Staff is available for questions.
Ordinance number 2020-42, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, adopting the Largo Tri-City Special Area Plan, creating overlay districts which allow for additional density and intensity, and design an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, amending the City of Largo Comprehensive Plan to incorporate policies relevant to the implementation of the Largo Tri-City Special Area Plan by amending Policy 1.1.1, Table Flu-1, and adding Policy 2.2.5 within the future land use element, amending Policy 1.1.8 within the placemaking element, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this?
I have no cards and nobody on Zoom.
Any questions from the commission?
Move to adopt ordinance number 2020-42 on second and final reading.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next is ordinance number 2020-36.
Okay, so this is ordinance number 2020-36, second reading, amending the comprehensive plan to implement provisions contained within the Largo Tri-City Special Area Plan. The Community Development Department received feedback from the Department of Economic Opportunity on October 22nd, 2020, and you'll see that letter within your packet. This was used for the basis for the additional revisions after first reading. And what it looked to do is it revises the comp plan by adding policy 2.26 and table flu-2. And this is really just bringing in the density and intensities into the comp plan itself. So no changes were made to exhibits B and C, and staff's available for questions.
Ordinance number 2020-36, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, amending the City of Largo Comprehensive Plan to incorporate policies relevant to the implementation of the Largo Tri-City Special Area Plan by amending Policy 1.1.1, Table Flu-1, and adding Policy 2.2.5 within the future land use element, amending Policy 1.1.8 within the placemaking element, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any cards on this?
I have no cards.
Any questions from the commission?
I move to adopt ordinance number 2020-36 as amended on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next is item number 16.
Okay, and this is another concurrent agenda item with the other two. This is ordinance 2020-39, second reading, Largo Tri-City Special Area Plan Future Land Use Map Amendment. There have been no changes made since first reading. Previous actions, this went to Planning Board August 6th and was voted 5-0 approved, and approved by City Commission on first reading September 1st, 2020. This also went to Forward Pinellas Planners Advisory Committee and approved or recommended approval on October 5th, 2020, and was approved by Ford Pinellas Board on October 14th, and then approved by the City Countywide Planning Authority on November 17th, 2020. Staff is available for questions.
Ordinance number 2020-39, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, amending the comprehensive plan future land use map designation of the within described tracts of land located along U.S. Highway 19, East Bay Drive, and Roosevelt Boulevard between Lions Club Road and 49th Street North, Pinellas County, Florida, to add Largo Tri-City Activity Center and Multimodal Corridor as overlays and amending the city future land use map on file in the Office of the City Clerk pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 163, Part 2, Florida statutes, and the Pinellas Countywide Plan rules, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any cards?
I have no cards.
Any questions?
I move to adopt ordinance number 2020-39 on second and final reading.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next is item number 17.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. The next 23 ordinances are second and final reading for the annexation of 25 properties. The land use of these properties are residential low medium, residential rural, industrial limited, and commercial general. All requirements as specified in Chapter 171 of the state statutes have been met, including the advertisements which were published on November 25th and December 2nd. All 25 properties are contiguous to the city's municipal boundaries through previous annexations and together help to reduce the size of existing enclaves. The ordinance proposes to annex property that is compact as that term is defined in Chapter 171. Therefore, it is staff's opinion that all of the properties may be annexed voluntarily in accordance with Chapter 171. The Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners and Pinellas County Planning have been noticed and did not provide any objections. All city departments reviewed these annexations and indicated services can be provided to the properties. Staff is available for questions at this time.
Ordinance number 2021-02, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1837 South Lake Avenue, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any cards on any of these annexations?
I do not.
Okay. Any questions from the commission?
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-02 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-03, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1835 Chateau Drive West, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-03 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-04, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1664 Palace Drive, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-04 on second and final reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-05, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1607 Leisure Drive, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Oh, sorry. I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-05 on second and final reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-06, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1618 Leisure Drive, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-06 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-07, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1637 Fortune Drive, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-07 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-08, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 980 Porter Drive, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-08 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-09, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 126 Emerald Lane, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-09 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-10, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1132 Gershwin Drive, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-10 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-11, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1054 Gershwin Drive, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-11 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-12, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 2964 Roberta Street, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-12 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-13, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 14884 Revere Road, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-13 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-14, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 7125 Darien Way, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-14 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-15, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 15432 Bedford Circle East, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-15 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-16, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tracts of land located at 1629 and 1643 Palm Way, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low-medium, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said additions according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-16 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-17, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1671 Palm Way, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low-medium, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-17 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-18, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 2390 Kent Place, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential rural, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-18 on second and final reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-19, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 1819 Juanita Court, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-19 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-20, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 7887 Powderhorn Circle, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of residential low, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-20 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-21, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 2233 Sherrill Road, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of industrial limited, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-21 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-22, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located east of Lake Avenue Southeast and north of Ulmerton Road on east side of Sherrill Road, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of industrial limited, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-22 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-23, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tracts of land located at 2340 Sherrill Road and 2345 Southwind Lane, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of industrial limited, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-23 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ordinance number 2021-30, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, annexing the within described tract of land located at 15064 U.S. Highway 19 North, Pinellas County, Florida, and contiguous to the existing city limits of the City of Largo, Florida, with city land use designation of commercial general, redefining the corporate boundary of the City of Largo to include said addition according to the provisions of Chapter 171 Florida statutes, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2021-30 on second and final reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. I know that was a lot of work.
Thank you, Diane.
It was easy for us compared to what you did, I'm sure.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is item number 18.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Commissioners. This item seeks approval of the scope and fee to conduct an engineering inflow and infiltration evaluation of the Lift Station 19 sanitary sewer basin. The location of this evaluation is west of Indian Rocks Road, between Siesta Road to the north and Walsingham Road to the south. This evaluation marks the beginning of the fourth year of our inflow and infiltration reduction program. The evaluation was originally scheduled for fiscal year 2025 within the fiscal year 2021 through 2025 capital improvements plan. However, the Environmental Services Department has highlighted an opportunity to improve consent order compliance at the wastewater treatment plant by completing this evaluation in fiscal year 2021. Specifically, this evaluation and any future follow-on inflow and infiltration corrective actions is part of a multi-pronged strategy to reduce disinfection byproducts, or in this case, dichlorobromomethane, or better known as bromo, at the treatment plant in order to meet the consent order deadline of December 2022. One of the most productive approaches of this multi-pronged strategy is to identify lift station basins with salt water coming into the collection system through groundwater infiltration. Salt water contains naturally occurring bromide compounds, which when entering the plant will produce the disinfection byproduct bromo. Environmental Services water sampling shows that we have high bromide levels coming into lift stations 19 and 26. Approval of lift station 26 inflow and infiltration evaluation will be requested in the next agenda item. In summary, this evaluation is not only another step towards reducing future sanitary sewer overflows in our community. It also serves as the first step in reducing the amount of bromide from entering the wastewater treatment plant and is expected to result in a reduction of disinfection byproducts. Staff is happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any cards on this?
I have no cards.
Any questions from the commission? I had a question. I'm relatively familiar with that area. I guess my question is, do we have any idea where we might suspect to see this infiltration, whether it's on public collector lines or more likely private laterals?
We certainly expect to see the most westward collection system gravity line and their manholes that are out in the mangroves to see that saltwater intrusion, at least into the manholes. A number of years ago, a good portion of the gravity pipe had already been lined, and we will know more with our consultant doing this evaluation. They're going to actually do a saltwater test in each manhole, and then that'll help us focus exactly to your point, Mayor, of pinpointing where the saltwater intrusion is occurring throughout the network of the collection system. It also will lead us to have more future knowledge about how far inland the saltwater intrusion is in the groundwater table, for us to look at further locations around the city that borders either saltwater or brackish water tidal creeks to target as future steps towards bromide reduction as well.
Right, so we have manholes all the way out, like into Bonner Park, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Any other questions?
I move to approve scope and fee for an engineering inflow and infiltration evaluation of the lift station 19 sanitary sewer basin by McKim & Creed, Inc. in the amount of $208,991 in accordance with professional services agreement RFQ number 19-Q-666.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next is item number 19.
This item, in a similar way to the previous agenda item, seeks approval of a scope and fee to conduct an engineering inflow and infiltration evaluation in the lift station 26 sanitary sewer basin. This location evaluation is adjacent to the Allens Creek drainage basin and is in generally the general area northeast of Belcher Elementary School. In a similar manner, Environmental Services water sampling has shown that we do have saltwater intrusion flowing through that portion of the collection system. Staff is happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any cards on this?
I have no cards.
Any questions from the commission?
I move to approve scope and fee for an engineering inflow and infiltration evaluation of the lift station 26 sanitary sewer basin by McKim & Creed, Inc. in the amount of $141,167 in accordance with professional services agreement RFQ number 19-Q-666.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I do have a question from Vice Mayor Robinson.
Just real quick, how many more of these of the lift stations are on the east or west side of town that could be affected, or are there any other besides these two?
On the western side, this would complete that portion of the most western boundary along the intracoastal, basically between Pinellas County and Clearwater, the bracket, our coastal properties. I have not tallied up all of the adjacent properties that are within the tidal ranges of our creeks that flow to Tampa Bay. I certainly could get back, staff can get back to you on that.
Yeah, I was just curious as to if there was any other lift stations that could be affected by the same issues that we're seeing in these two.
There certainly will be. We know the most eastern ones are those out around Feather Sound, and those in between, basically, in that whole area.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next up is item number 7.
20?
Item number what?
I was reading the wrong number. Item number 20.
We can go backwards.
Resolution number 2281.
Do all those annexations again.
Yeah.
Diane says she's ready.
Sorry, Jeff, we scared you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. The purpose of this item is to present the finalized draft of the finding of necessity for the Clearwater Largo Road expansion area. On June 2nd, 2020, the City Commission approved a professional services agreement with consultants Kimley Horn for preparation of the finding of necessity analysis for the Clearwater Largo Road Community Redevelopment District expansion area. The current Clearwater Largo Road Community Redevelopment District does not have a tax increment fund to support redevelopment activity in the area. Expansion of the existing district was proposed in 2016 to include the Missouri Avenue corridor with the intent to establish a tax increment finance district. Expansion was put on hold at that time pending the county's approval of the 15-year review of the West Bay Drive Community Redevelopment District. The county approved the 15-year review on July 21st, 2020, and as such, Kimley Horn began with the study for the Clearwater Largo Road expansion area. The Finding of Necessity Report, also known as the FON, is the required first step in attaining delegation of redevelopment authority from the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners to proceed with the expansion of the district and to establish the tax increment fund. Using available data from the city, county, and other sources, the Finding of Necessity study establishes the existence of certain conditions, identifies the specific problems that may be addressed through adoption of a redevelopment plan, and importantly, creates the findings necessary to designate the area as blighted and delegating authority for creation of a redevelopment district. Because Pinellas County is a charter county, under Florida statutes, the City of Largo must receive delegation from Pinellas County to exercise the authority granted by Chapter 163, Part 3 of Florida statutes. In essence, in order to receive delegation of authority from the Board of County Commissioners, the finding of necessity must meet dual standards. That is, Chapter 163, Part 3 Florida statutes for blight conditions and Pinellas County's Community Redevelopment Area Policy Program and Implementation Guidelines, which is a scoring policy to determine eligibility for community redevelopment areas tax increment funding. The city's consultant, Mr. Kelly Klepper, is here this evening to provide more information about the process and the study findings. After his presentation, staff will provide a summary of the timeline process and information about an upcoming Board of County Commission meeting where there will be discussion of recommendations and of the update to Pinellas County's redevelopment area policy program and implementation guidelines with an opportunity for Largo representation at the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Klepper, for being here this evening, and I'll go ahead and hand off the presentation to you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Commission. For the record, as Carissa said, my name is Kelly Klepper with Kimley Horn and Associates. With me tonight is Andrea Papandreou, one of our planners with Kimley Horn. Together, we're I'll say the lead team for this analysis. There's quite a bit of team members behind this. But what we're going to do is spend a little bit of time and quickly go through some of the findings and kind of give you a little bit more insight and information into what we found, having done this specific to, of course, the City of Largo and the Clearwater Road area, but also drawing upon our experience from a firm-wide perspective. And when I say firm-wide perspective, Florida perspective. We do quite a few of these types of assessments across the state. I actually serve on the Florida Redevelopment Association Board of Directors and have been doing these types of plans and projects for the better part of the 15 years I've been with Kimley Horn. So with that, Yeah, it is going to work perfect. So as Chris has said, we're back before you tonight. We presented some information back to you in October. So tonight is just kind of the recap of that, and also to allow you to ask any questions along the way. Now, keeping in mind, there's quite a bit of information in your backup materials. It's about 120 pages or 110 pages of documentation that's in there. That's the analysis that our firm performed in association with city staff, and I will say, and I said it last time, the amount of participation and assistance that we receive from city staff, from Carissa, from the rest of the team has been outstanding, and we wouldn't not be here at the time frame we are without her and the rest of the city staff. So why are we here? We talked about this, and we actually started, initially thinking about this in 2015. As Carissa said, we started doing the formal analysis in 2016. We went on to a slight pause at that point while the county was trying to, kind of refine what they were doing. So we're not going to sit there and say that the information and analysis that was performed almost 5 years ago is being taken out of play. To the contrary, we're building off of that. That gives us that necessary baseline to continue to move forward. We're required to actually go back a number of years and start analyzing trends as far as property values, incidences of crime. And so the ability to have that much information, especially at our fingertips, to bring it forward for the same exact area is critical in what we're talking about tonight. And you'll see some of those comparisons. So we use this as that basis for comparison so that we're providing, as kind of like what you do with your comprehensive plans and land use decisions, competent, substantial evidence moving forward. And more importantly, this helps us tell the story of why we need a redevelopment district for the Clearwater Road area. As Carissa said, being a charter county, which Pinellas is, we've got a dual requirement that we have to pass. There's the Florida statutes component, Chapter 163, Part 3, as well as the Pinellas County standards. Those two come together to form, in essence, the CRD, that Clearwater Road Redevelopment District. So there's two different sets of analyses that we have to do as part of this. Some of it is the same, some of it overlaps, some of it's completely separate, but we have to analyze it nonetheless. So the first part of this is the Florida statutes component. The statutes actually establish a number of criteria, over 15 criteria that we have to take a look at. And the key word in a lot of this is predominance. Now, some people go, oh, the entire area has to meet this. No. The majority of the properties, the majority of the area, the larger portions have to meet these standards. It can't be one out of the larger pool, but the predominance of factors and these 15 factors or a number of these factors within the area is defined. We're looking at everything from faulty lot layouts. We're looking at conditions where there's lack of sidewalks or conditions that are not suitable. We're looking at incidences of crime. We're looking at stormwater. We're looking at property values. We're looking at a number of different things as we go through this. A lot of this information is at our fingertips, but a lot of it's not. So that's where we have to start to kind of dig at that point. The second half of that is, of course, looking and utilizing the county's requirements that they adopted back in 2016 and been kind of refining and tweaking along the way. They have 9 qualifying conditions that we have to meet the test of as well. And part of that goes into the point system that we talk about at the end of this presentation. Do we or do we not qualify? If so, what is that level of qualification? And that sets the stage for what level of funding that we can ask for and receive from the county to move forward with improvements within this area. We normally talk about the process towards the end of this presentation, but as Chris has said, it's important to think about where we are in the current process. We have to do the finding of necessity. We have to get that initial resolution and the request to go back to the county. The county's kind of been changing the rules. I'm not going to say necessarily changing the rules, but changing how we get to certain things. But the good news is that your staff has been in constant communication with the county staff and trying to make sure that this process continues to move forward, not only in a timely manner, but also consistent with the ground rules that we've been playing under for the last couple of years. So what we do is, at the end of the day, we're asking for that delegation. We'll be going and meeting with the county staff. We'll be doing some additional analysis. And as Carissa has provided in her staff report, there's a timeline at which we come back and start looking at the CRD master plan, and that actually starts to kind of identify what projects and where and how. So almost like that capital improvements and almost like your comprehensive plan and your land development code components specific to a redevelopment area. All of that gets rolled up into your master plan. It's also identified as part of that TIF, that Tax Increment Finance Trust Fund, the way in which we fund this. Now, I know we all know this here, but one of the things that we always like to clarify is
A TIF, tax increment finance, is not a tax. It is basically taking a portion of the revenues from growth, from redevelopment, and siphoning and putting those back into a dedicated fund specific to the master plan. So there again, it's revenues that are already being generated. It's just taking a portion of those and earmarking those for a specific purpose within a specific area. So what's the data that we collected and looked at? As you can see, this is a pretty extensive list. There's over 20 different items that we looked at. And you may go, well, you only needed to meet a certain number of those. Why did you do more? Because we felt like we needed to. We wanted that additional justification to go to the county and say, we don't meet just the bare minimum. We understand we meet the majority of these criteria. And so there's additional backup. And the other thing is that for some reason, if the county says, well, we're not going to allow that, we've got additional criteria that we've analyzed as part of this to help substantiate the analysis itself. So the area itself is a little over a square mile. Unfortunately, what we didn't do is to animate the slide or provide the secondary slide, but the area that's in between the two blue areas is your existing CRD. The blue areas are those areas that we've been primarily identifying as part of this analysis moving forward. So all in all, we've got about, like I said, 844 acres, a little over a square mile that we're talking about between the existing and the expansion. That's not big by certain standards by any means, but it is a significant amount of area in there, and there are a number of properties that we're working with to hopefully help redevelop. From a socioeconomic standpoint, is this slide out of order? Did we print off the wrong one? So we'll go to this one. Sorry. Caught me off guard there for a second. So we started to dive into the specifics, socioeconomic data, and a lot of this criteria is actually established by the county. So as we're going through this, you'll see, the proposed CRD is that middle column, and the county average or the county standards are on the right. You can see that the households below the poverty line are actually higher than those of the county. The median per capita income is lower, and also the median residential values are lower than the county's average as a whole. So there again, we're looking not only at what's going on within this area, but believe it or not, we're actually looking at what's going on at the citywide level as well as the county. The other things that we start looking at are defective infrastructure, so street layouts, parking. Are there areas that are not set up correctly from an access standpoint? Are there parking areas that too much parking? Is it inefficiently laid out, or has it just not been maintained? Public transportation, is there existing transportation, or are there headways, the wait times for the transit exceeding certain standards? Are properties connected? Are roadways connected? Are the areas connected? Are there barriers to moving people and goods back and forth? Are there a lack of facilities for bicycle and pedestrians? What we started identifying and understand early on was, especially with the socioeconomic components of this area, that there was not a lot of two-vehicle homes or even one-vehicle homes. A lot of people are having to walk or ride the transit to get from point A to point B, or they have very limited means from a vehicular standpoint. So that's one of those things that we start looking at. Where are those people going for daily needs? Where are they going for jobs? So we start thinking about some of those aspects. We look at crime. Now, we couldn't define it specific to the CRD, so we had to look at zones A and C, and I do appreciate the information that's provided by the police department. And the one thing that we start to look at and glean that is, the CRD as proposed is about 3% of the city, but it has about 7% of the total incidences reported. So you can see that there's a disproportionate number of items going on. Now, one of the things I want to make sure is very, very clear is we're not saying that the city and its staff, the police department, fire, whoever, that they're not doing their job. To the contrary, this is an area that needs help, just like any other area of the city. You've got priorities that need to be taken care of. They're doing as much as they can with a limited amount of resources. So what we're trying to do is create that extra tool in the toolbox for those departments to be able to carry on their mission. These folks do a yeoman's job. I'll be the first one to sit here and tell you that, just listening to them talk and sit through meetings. They know what's going on. They care about the city. They care about this area. They need the additional help. So that's why we're asking for this declaration. From an assessed value standpoint, this is a big item. What we start to look at is what's been the amount of growth in property values over a certain period of time. And what you'll start to see is that the CRD has grown about 8.5%, just under 9%. Citywide, property values have grown almost 12.5%, almost 13%. So you can see that the area is not growing at the same economic pace as the rest of the city or portions of the county as well. What were some of the other topics we analyzed? Pavement condition, wastewater conditions, fire and EMS, unemployment. As you can see, it's almost double based off the information that we had available at the time of this report as far as the amount of percent of employment within the CRD as it relates to the overall county as a whole. So you can start to see that there are areas, and we've basically identified through this analysis, we've substantiated the claim that this area should, in fact, be qualified as a CRD, including not only the Florida statute standards, but also for the Pinellas County standards. We did get into a sub-district analysis because that's one of the things we identified early on in case there was any questions or concerns about if certain areas started to be broken out. So there again, all of that information is in your report. We're not going to dive into it tonight. But at the end of the day, what we do want to make sure to identify is based off of the county's scoring matrix, those 9 criteria that we identified early on and the point system, we believe that the city, based on the independent assessment, can generate a significant number. Now, this is the maximum number of points that the county will allow, this 105. What we said was, you got to try to make sure that you are above 80 in order to get the maximum dollars from the county. And there again, there's those tiers. So what we did is, based off of our analysis and doing the scoring criteria, we calculated that the city could receive upwards of 89 points, 9 points above the 80 from that top threshold. So possible 105, we believe that the city has accumulated 89 points towards meeting that goal. So what are our next steps? So depending on how the discussion goes tonight, we'd ask for a favorable recommendation, sit down with the staff, and then ask for a review by Pinellas County, start moving towards an April 2021 delegation of authority, and then move forward with the subsequent update of the CRD master plan itself. And with that, like I said, we can go into specifics. I'm not going to go through each of these, but just know that this information is in here as far as the sub-district analysis and the summaries. I'm just going to quickly scroll through the numbers, and you can see some of the specifics that we identified within each of those. Maybe, maybe not. Carissa, can you see if you can?
Are you trying to go backward?
Keep going forward.
Next slide, please.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just keep going forward. Next slide. I'm going to quit touching this, see if it's something I'm doing. Well, with that, we'll just say that are there any questions? We're here to answer any questions. We appreciate the opportunity to partner with your staff, and also look forward to continuing to work with the city towards this important goal.
At this time, I would also like to provide the City Commission an update about where the county is in their process for their policy update. The county staff expects a new policy to be adopted in the second quarter of 2021. The timeline of the Clearwater Largo Road expansion and approval of the tax increment trust fund is contingent upon the county's policy update. However, county staff has encouraged the city to move forward with the expansion request. Staff was informed that there will be an agenda item regarding the policy update recommendations for discussion on Thursday, January 7th, 2021, from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the Board of County Commissioners work session meeting, and this meeting will be held in the Magnolia Room at the Botanical Gardens. The discussion will be about the recommendations from the county's consultant on the updated Community Redevelopment Agency policy and implementation guidelines. At this point in time, staff does not have a draft. However, if the City Commission desires to attend, attendance can be coordinated through Gloria in the mayor's office, and if talking points are needed, staff can coordinate that as well. Following adoption of resolution number 2281 For the approval of the finding of necessity, the city will forward the resolution and will request delegation of redevelopment authority to Pinellas County for their review and approval. And this sets off the timeline. If it is submitted in December, the review period by the county is a period of 120 days, which will put the consideration before the Board of County Commissioners at a public hearing for the delegation of authority at April 2021. And in May, after the subsequent to the delegation of authority by the county, staff will return to the City Commission to begin the process for a budgetary approval for consultant services to develop a public involvement process and the new redevelopment plan for the existing and expanded district. And the process for the development of the plan is anticipated to take approximately 1 year. And then afterwards, on second quarter of 2022, that process would entail adoption of the updated redevelopment plan by the Largo City Commission to, again, resubmit that to Pinellas County. And then the third quarter of 2022, the Board of County Commissioners would have an opportunity to review and consider the redevelopment plan and the trust fund for the expanded district. And then fourth quarter of 2022 and beyond would require an update to the comprehensive plan to include the new redevelopment plan. Staff is available to answer questions at this time.
Resolution number 2281, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Largo, Florida, providing for the finding of necessity relating to the existence of one or more conditions in a certain area of the City of Largo that meet the criteria described in Section 163.3408 Florida statutes, providing for other findings, providing for the acceptance, approval, and adoption of the City of Largo Clearwater Largo Road Community Redevelopment District Finding of Necessity Study, finding the need for a community redevelopment area under the provisions of Chapter 163, Part 3 of the Florida statutes, providing for limitation of effect, providing for severability, conflict, and an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this?
I have no cards.
Do we have any questions? Commissioner Carroll.
We talked about this the last time you presented. I just want to make sure that we're on the record on the topic of annexation, because a large portion at the north end of the area we're talking about is under the jurisdiction of Pinellas County. It can skew the numbers a little bit because our fire department responds to calls there. Pedestrian crashes where the pedestrian may live in that area but cross the road in the city. But not only at the northern boundary, there are some areas on the west side of Clearwater Largo Road that are unincorporated, that are high service demands. Maybe not at the exact address for our police department, but the residents there can cause issues or high service demands. So however you choose to address that, I just want to communicate that the only way we can have any control over improving some of those properties is to have them in the city, so we have jurisdiction. And I thank you for your efforts. I like what we're doing here. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Robinson.
Thank you. I actually had written down something very similar to Commissioner Carroll, so I won't continue on that path. But,
all right, Commissioner Smith. I'm just kidding.
So the only other thing I wanted to say was I actually live in this area. I spoke to city manager as well as the city attorney, asking if I should abstain from voting because potentially there, so anyhow, I was asked or told to not abstain. So, I'm just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that in case there's any questions moving forward down the road. But that's all I had since John stole my thunder.
All right. It's all based on the size of the class, the attorney would probably tell you.
That's exactly right.
Commissioner Smith.
I agree. I think this is a great report and how you put it together. And I kind of question, I walked about a week ago, I went and walked this for about 2 hours and wanted to see the outsides and what was being proposed in this area and stuff. If someone asked a question, and maybe you can explain this, if someone was looking at it from the perception of we have this development that's going on there, why do you need a TIF? How would you address that in this report?
So the first thing I would say is it's great that you're having development, but it's not occurring at the same rate. So we're not playing equally with other portions of the county. So, there's still a significant number of properties that need assistance, and it's the area as a whole. So as we, incremental redevelopment is great. If we can help facilitate additional infrastructure improvements or all that, it's going to increase that, which is only going to increase the underlying tax base both for the city as well as the county.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gerard.
Thank you. I think this is a great plan as well. I think it's a great presentation. I'm very excited about expanding the redevelopment area. I do have a question about property values. I know that this expansion area, as well as the Clearwater Largo Road area, both have a great number of mobile home communities. And how does that relate to the average value that we were talking about? I think we talked about 97,000 as opposed to 179,000. Do you weigh, do you weight that somehow?
Well, and I appreciate that question, and I know Carissa and our team have both talked about that previously. Ms. Papandreou, I'm going to ask her to come up here as well, or get within 6 feet of me, I should say. We do take that into consideration. We're looking at individual property values. If it's a manufactured home park, we're looking at it from that aspect. So looking at those dollars to dollars. We understand that, mobile home, manufactured home may be worth significantly less than other areas, but also keeping in mind that there are areas outside of this that are equally situated. So we know that there's mobile home parks or manufactured home parks outside the CRD that are also affecting the countywide average.
But you do have a great preponderance of manufactured home, mobile home communities here too. So you might have an area that has, in this expansion area, maybe 80%. And I'm just throwing that number out, not saying that that's the actual number, as opposed to countywide, it might only be, 30% or 40%.
And
also inventing that number.
And that's one of the reasons we look at I'll say the 20 categories versus only focusing in on the property valuations. So even if somebody said, okay, we're going, like I was saying, the county could say, we're going to discount that because of the number of manufactured home communities in this area, we still have 19 other categories that we've identified. But we do take that under consideration, yes, sir.
We have that 9-point spread that we're looking for.
9-point spread, it actually could be a little higher, but we want to be a little conservative as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great. It's a great presentation.
Thank you. I had a question. Did you have more? Are you good?
I'm done.
Okay. I had a question, and I may not get an answer, and I'm okay with that. But my question is, the one thing that jumped out at me on the county's list of priorities or the matrix was the one that we got a 0 on, which was coastal high hazard area, because this is not in a coastal high hazard area. It's on the ridge of Pinellas County. And so it made me think about, okay, well, why would the county want to invest in TIFs in the coastal high hazard area, A? B, looking at the coast, there probably are some blighted areas in the coastal high hazard area, but there's not a whole lot. Most of the coastal high hazard area, if you look around, is the most expensive real estate in the county. So it was interesting, and I'm not sure why that would be included in the county's matrix for priorities for community redevelopment districts.
And I'm going to defer to Carissa. The one thing that I would say is that one kind of baffled us as well, especially when you read the state statutes, especially from a comprehensive planning perspective, because you're supposed to be not only trying to minimize residential densities and development within those coastal high hazard areas, but you're also minimizing public expenditures except where absolutely necessary. So yeah, that one, I'm not sure, Carissa, if you've...
Unfortunately, I do not have an answer on that one.
I started with I didn't expect an answer. I just wanted to complain, I guess, a little bit. Commissioner Carroll.
Yeah, just a follow-up question, kind of along the same theme we were talking about and in the previous presentation. I always wonder what the lag time is. I mean, it's a snapshot in time that we're talking about. Looking at the 15-year review from 2000 to 2015, it was published in June of 18. Okay, so up in the area we're talking about, there have been significant improvements, and I don't want to, say we don't need any assistance up there, because we do, but I wonder how much time goes by before you look at how the demographics have changed or the income levels have changed based on high-density multifamily development and so forth, or the elimination of a large substandard mobile home park like Clearwater Trailer City was, high service demand, substandard living. What do you think? Is it just upon your review ever so often, or what is the time increment we're talking about?
I mean, the hope is it's done within that 20 to 30-year period. I always like to say, government years are like dog years. But some people find that funny, other people don't. But you start thinking about it, that the redevelopment of that mobile home park, you've taken a property that was substandard and now you've increased it. But at the same time, you've got other properties that haven't been touched during that same period. So you start looking, what is that offset? I mean, looking at some of the areas that I started back in, 2005 and 2010, we're just now seeing the redevelopment efforts really kind of taking hold for a couple of different reasons. So it is definitely not a sprint.
I know we talked about it before. I just kind of wanted to put that back out on the table.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Robinson.
Thank you. I just wanted to answer or to kind of comment on Commissioner Smith's comment and expand on your answer. Is definitely I would suggest if somebody was asking about that area, and you said that you were out there a couple weeks ago walking along Clearwater Largo Road. This is right, yeah. So it's a much bigger area than just along Clearwater Largo Road. I mean, we're talking probably almost a mile to the east or better. So there's definitely there is a little bit of expansion going on along Clearwater Largo Road, which is fantastic. We all are happy to see that, but it's a much larger area, and I believe you said it great. Just to look at it as a whole.
It's easy to drive it and look at it.
Correct. Yeah. Get off Clearwater Largo Road and head back into some of those streets. That's all I had. Thank you.
At the previous work session regarding the same item, I know the city commissioners had requested an update about briefing the two county commissioners, and at this point in time, I'd also like to offer up if any of the commissioners desire to also schedule additional one-on-one meetings with the other Board of County Commissioners, we can go ahead and coordinate that as well through the mayor's office. We'd be happy to facilitate that.
When was
I have Renee Flowers.
You know anybody over there?
I have Renee Flowers.
I can ask around.
Yeah, all right. So when was that meeting? You had mentioned the meeting that they're going to discuss.
Yes, January 7th. That is Thursday, January 7th.
January 7th.
Yes, so I'd be happy to provide the information to Gloria to provide to the commission. Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. I might be able to.
It's in the morning, 9:30 to 11:30.
Yeah, if you can just send that to Gloria, I might see if I can get over there for that.
That was the one that at the Botanical Garden?
Correct.
I wrote it on the wrong date.
I'm meeting with Commissioner Flowers after the first, so I'll get with you so we can get with her.
Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion if there's no other discussion or questions.
I move to approve resolution number 2281 for acceptance, approval, and adoption of the Clearwater Largo Road expansion area finding of necessity.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Merry Christmas. Have a happy holiday and stay
Likewise.
safe, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is resolution number 2287.
Yes, thank you very much. The purpose of this item is to present the resolution number 2287, amending the West Bay Drive Community Redevelopment District Plan by incorporating amendments set forth in the 15-year review report of the West Bay Drive Community Redevelopment District Plan, including the capital expenditures budget for fiscal years 2016 through 2030. On July 21st, 2020, the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners adopted their resolution, which is number 20-70, accepting the 15-year review report and on the trust fund. And the Board of County Commissioners resolution requires the city to amend the West Bay Drive plan to include the 15-year review report, which includes the projects in the plan, the schedule of capital expenditures, and subsequently submit a copy of the amendment to the Pinellas County Clerk. in order to ratify the amendment to the West Bay Drive Community Redevelopment District Plan to include the items requested by the Board of County Commissioners. The resolution 2287 has been prepared for adoption by the City Commission. After adoption, staff will file a copy with the Pinellas County Clerk. Staff is available to answer questions at this time.
Resolution number 2287, a resolution of the City of Largo Community Redevelopment Agency amending the West Bay Drive Community Redevelopment District Plan for the City of Largo, Florida by incorporating amendments set forth in the 15-year review report of the West Bay Drive Community Redevelopment District Plan and the capital expenditures budget for fiscal year 2016 through 2030 pursuant to the Community Redevelopment Act of 1969, Chapter 163, Part 3, Florida statutes, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this?
I have none.
Any questions from the commission?
I move to approve resolution number 2287.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next is item number 22, which is resolution number 2286.
Congratulations also.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Yes,
congratulations.
congratulations.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. The agreement that I have as Resolution 2286 is for the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund aid. As you know, Pinellas County did receive an allocation of $170.1 million that they then took a per capita amount for all the municipalities. The agreement that you actually have was amended last night, so the resolution has been updated and reviewed by the city attorney. So instead of being the $1,049,000, it is now at $1,741,434. So they did go through and update the per capita amount from $12.35 to $20.50. So what this agreement contains is all of the items that were previously allowable under the FEMA agreement, plus some additional. So it does include costs from the city that were spent on the Family First Sick Leave Act, as well as potentially expanding public employees' ability to work remotely. So right now they're gathering information. This agreement's required to be in place by December 23rd. However, the expenses are still being accumulated through December 30th, and then we'll be submitting the total to Pinellas County by January 30th. So I would like to request an approval to this resolution and an amendment to reflect the amended amount of $1,741,434.
Resolution number 2286, a resolution of the City of Largo, Florida, delegating to the city manager of the City of Largo the authority to legally bind the City of Largo for the sole purpose of requesting federal reimbursement concerning assistance for the recovery from COVID-19 by entering into a federally funded subaward grant agreement and subsequent grant agreement amendments with Pinellas County without further authorization from the commission up to a maximum aggregate amount of, sorry, Rebecca, you lost me after $1,741,000.
434.
Thank you. Okay. Up to a maximum aggregate amount of $1,741,434, repealing all resolutions in conflict and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on
I
this?
have no public comment.
Any questions?
I move to approve resolution number 2286.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. I did have, this, our help for small businesses and that type of stuff wouldn't qualify for this funding, is that correct?
Unfortunately, the aid that we've provided to small businesses and the residential aid does not qualify. But
Go ahead.
They did expand the program as recently as November, because at first it was just going to be covering the 12.5% local share of the FEMA grant, and then they expanded it on a pretty big scale. So I'm not sure if this is the final.
Okay. And I know you may not have this exact number, but what percentage of this number do you think we've spent on COVID-related costs?
On eligible items, so far, we're still accumulating through the end of the year about $440,000.
Okay.
So it did expand the amount that we previously had for FEMA we basically doubled it with that Family First Sick Leave costs.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And did we need to amend this ordinance in the motion?
Yeah.
She read it there with the new number.
This is a resolution, and the clerk read it with the new amount in there, so since it hasn't been adopted on first reading, you don't
Okay.
really...
Motion passes 7-0. Just want to make sure we're okay. Thank you very much, and congratulations. Next up is item number 23.
Well, good evening. The City of Largo was awarded funding through the Coronavirus Relief Fund, or CRF, in the amount of $458,580, and that's intended to assist Largo households that have been financially impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. The things that we can assist them with are housing, utilities, as well as emergency repair costs. This funding is through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, otherwise known as the CARES Act, and it's a pass-through grant through the state of Florida. The history of this is that in order to utilize the funds, on September the 1st of this year, City Commission approved the establishment of the Coronavirus Relief Fund Resident Assistance Program and approved a subrecipient agreement back to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation to allow the City of Largo to accept the funds. And then on October the 6th, the City Commission approved another agreement, a sub-grantee agreement, with a nonprofit, Tampa Bay Community Development Corporation, to administer for us the residential financial assistance program on the city's behalf. And tonight what we have is a first amendment to that sub-grantee agreement that'll do a few things. It'll add a new fee for service for monthly eligibility assessment and verification. That was something that was not foreseen when the documents were originally prepared. The agreement was originally prepared. And then also it'll revise an existing attachment and add a new attachment that incorporates in recent technical guidance from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation that we need to have in the agreement. It'll also proactively extend the term of the agreement to March the 31st of next year, and that's in case Congress extends the December 30th deadline. Right now, we can't expend funds past the end of this year. So what we're hoping is that Congress will extend it, and we want to be proactive about that. And then finally, this would also allow us to authorize the city manager to execute the First Amendment to the sub-grantee agreement.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this?
No public comment.
Any questions from the commission?
I move to approve the First Amendment to the Coronavirus Relief Fund sub-grantee agreement with Tampa Bay Community Development Corporation and authorize the city manager to execute the First Amendment to the sub-grantee agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next is item number 24, ordinance 2021-31.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. This is the first reading of ordinance 2021-31, amending Chapter 5 of the City of Largo Code of Ordinances to provide regulations for animals within the city. At the City Commission's request at the October 8th, 2019 work session, the City Commission discussed with staff possible changes to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 5, related to animals. This discussion included possible changes to existing language and possibly adding regulations for the commercial sales of dogs and cats. The City Commission directed staff to conduct more research on this matter and to schedule an additional work session to further discuss this item and to allow public input. During the second work session on January 14th, 2020, staff presented additional information concerning the changes to the current code language and to the regulations of the commercial sale of dogs and cats. The City Commission also heard from several citizens or business owners that may be affected by these regulations or changes. The The City Commission directed staff to prepare and present language to be heard at a first reading for these specific changes and additions to Chapter 5 of the City Code of Ordinances. On September 8th, 2020, city staff, after submitting draft language of these changes and additions of our proposed ordinances, received comments from Pinellas County Attorney's Office, which represents Pinellas County Animal Services. Their comments indicated that nothing in our proposed language changes or additions was in conflict with their authority or would cause any preemptive issues if enacted as written. And I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ordinance number 2021-31, an ordinance of the City of Largo, Florida, amending the City of Largo Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 5 to establish definitions relating to animals, amending the regulations regarding animals within the city, and enacting regulations for the commercial sale of dogs and cats within the city, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this?
I have one card, Allie Julian.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Alexandria Julian. I reside at 2124 West Brandon Boulevard. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. I am here to speak on the pet retail sales ordinance. Our family opened All About Puppies on Ulmerton Road in 1995. 3 generations of our family currently are involved in the day-to-day operations. We actually were here previously discussing this earlier this year, and we're happy to be back here again today to discuss the ordinance that's in front of you all. We are certain that we can provide the necessary transparency and sourcing requirements that this ordinance stipulates. We believe it is very fairly written, with 2 minor exceptions. One, in Section 12, subsection B, buying standards under 1D, it states that have not received any state law violations in the past 2 years. Is this for state violations within the state of Florida pertaining to us, the pet store, or is this for the breeders that we work with within their home state? Is this just an agricultural related violation or all encompassing? If this statement could be clarified a little bit more, we would feel more comfortable with it. And if the statement is to mean, or is for our breeders in their home state, we would be agreeable to it saying has a valid state agriculture license if applicable. Almost every state with a decent number of breeders has approved their own laws regarding the health, safety, and welfare of the pets under their care. These laws have been enacted more recently than the USDA, so they typically do surpass the guidelines that we have federally. By giving a criteria for the USDA as noted in this ordinance and a current state license, you are going a step above because the state license would be a higher standard than the USDA loan. Moving on, but staying on the buying standards section under number 2, it states the information required by B1 above shall be posted and maintained on each animal's cage, kennel, or enclosure within clear view and in a reasonable proximity thereof. We are wondering if this could be changed to or in a reasonable proximity thereof. The reason for this is we have puppies in our store and they chew things. And unfortunately, we're more concerned about the documents being shredded or eaten. We typically do keep these documents safely behind our counter space, so they would be within reasonable proximity. Those are our only concerns. And again, thank you for taking the time to work with us to reach a common goal. We are very proud to be a part of this community. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
The old dog ate my homework.
Yeah, exactly.
Puppies chew things. Any other questions? Any questions from the commission?
Just
Commissioner Gerard.
Got in under the wire there.
you did.
Thank you very much. I know this is an important ordinance, and it's important to take a look at this. I have a question on the definitions, first of all.
Yes, sir.
Tracy. Animals domestic, routinely kept for personal use or enjoyment, blah, blah, blah. Dogs, cats, mice, hamsters, rabbits, and non-fowl birds. Is this just an example, or is it, not limited to these because there are people who keep pot-bellied pigs? And I have a question about reptiles as well. People who keep snakes and lizards and such. So the domestic animals limited only to those that are enumerated here, or?
No,
are
sir.
these just examples?
These are examples of that, and we try to take some guidance from the Florida Freshwater and Wildlife Conservation Commission's list of what they consider Class 1s, Class 2s, Class 3s. There are certain things that lizards, certain reptiles you can buy at the pet store, you might obtain through catching in your front yard that aren't poisonous, might be allowed to be possessed as long as they're used for personal use, personal possession. They're not for sale, they're not for reproduction. That gets into a different story. But this is that list is very, very broad. It could be a lot of things as far as what is considered a domestic animal. You did use the word pot-bellied pig. That does fall under our livestock and farm definition of an animal as a pig or a swine. So a pot-bellied pig isn't considered under our ordinance proposal a domesticated animal. Pigs and swines are not.
Although people keep them as pets.
They could.
Okay.
And the ordinance
There's
possibly
no
allows that.
restriction- There's no restriction on that.
Well, there are some restrictions, and it's covered in the ordinance here.
But they can walk them, I don't know if they take them to a dog park. That would be an interesting thing to watch, but they could walk them down the street as long as they carry plastic bags with them, plastic poop bags.
Well, and I'm assuming it's on a leash. If
Well,
somebody
yeah.
wanted to walk a pig, they certainly could. That'd be very rare, but I guess it could happen.
So in the language, should it just say it shall include but not limited to, so it's clearer?
We certainly can propose that on a supplemental, proposal if we want to do that.
I don't know, but we'll leave that to we'll leave that to Mr. Zimmett. Sorry. I also have a question about the posting in the pet stores.
Yes, sir.
So we are relying on, although it was just suggested that we might more soundly rely on state documentation. We're relying on the USDA to check on these these breeders, and then to document that the breeders are behaving properly.
Yes, sir. On a broad scope, yes, sir. I mean, as mentioned by the guest speaker, most of the states have some type of regulations internally. They're regulating these facilities as well. The USDA has overall authority on that. As they get transported into the state of Florida, then they get regulated by the Department of Agriculture. As they make it into Pinellas County, they get regulated by Pinellas County Animal Services. So there are a number of regulatory agencies that are watching these animals to make sure that they're brought in safely, that they're being taken care of before the consumers purchase them. So what we're looking for is to try to make sure that the documentation is presently there and available to the customers and to the city, so to make sure that everybody's following their requirements. Because there could be times where they bring an animal that didn't go through those regulatories, and these type of safeguards hopefully would catch that. If somebody bought an animal, a puppy or a cat on a black market basically, and brought it into their store to try to sell it, if they don't have that proper paperwork, we should be able to catch that.
We know that the breeders we know that these are legitimate breeders. My question is that the breeders that they originate at, they're legitimate breeders. They're not, to use this derogatory term, a puppy mill where, the dogs and cats are mistreated.
And part of that requirement of the new language is that they would have to display that and show who these are. Our staff is going to have to work through some of these new nuances of an ordinance that we've never regulated before. We're going to work with the USDA inspectors and review their documents to make sure that we might have to do a lot of research on the suppliers and breeders that our stores are using to make sure that they are meeting the requirements. The USDA posts most of these or all of these inspections. So we hope to work with our business owners, and we only have 2 of them currently in the city, to make sure they're following the ordinance, to make sure that we have a safe product for our residents that is being sold.
Well, it's not just the product's safe. I'm concerned about, the genesis of the puppies. I mean, I hope the puppies are healthy, but I'm also concerned about where they're bred. And I may be out of line, and it wouldn't be the first time in my life, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in the effective inspections by the USDA of these breeders. And I'm wondering, have you done any research into how often these inspections take place, what they're like? How often do they pass? How often do they fail?
Well, certainly, all that information is online with the USDA if we know the name of the breeders. Depending on the type of violations, the frequency of the violations, the USDA could do more inspections than they normally do. I can't answer to how many inspections, if they do them monthly, semi-annually. I don't know that answer, sir. But I do know that all of these animals that are supposed to be coming into our city are supposed to have been inspected. The facilities they came out of have been inspected by the USDA. Again, a lot of them are being regulated by their states they're coming from. Most of these animals are coming from Kentucky, North Carolina, Idaho. They're coming from certainly outside the state of Florida. So they're being regulated there. And again, once they come into the state of Florida, they're being regulated, and all that paperwork is supposed to be reviewed by the Department of Ag and their staff. And then, of course, the Pinellas County Animal Services does annual inspections as well. So hopefully with us adding another layer of inspections onto these facilities, and that'll be something we'll determine by staff on how often do we have to do that. Certainly in the beginning, we're going to be working very closely with these business owners to make sure they're complying with the new language. And then after that, it'll probably be a semi-annual or an annual inspection along with the occasional spot inspection.
One final question, and that concerns abandonment of reptiles. If you live in South Florida, you go into the Everglades, and they're proposing now that python is tasty meat. So because there's so many pythons that they're trying to capture them for meat. So is it going to be part of this ordinance, or is the county going to be taking, is the county regulating abandonment of reptiles, or is that a state preemption? I don't see where this ordinance really addresses it that much.
I don't know if the state, or certainly this ordinance does not address the abandonment of maybe exotics, pythons, iguanas and things of that nature we see happening in South Florida. Again, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission regulates all exotics in the state of Florida. So they would have the authority on any of this. If there was an abandonment of exotics, or if there was some type of neglect, they would probably have first rule in that.
So it's something that we would concern ourselves with.
No, sir.
Okay.
If we determined that there was an animal that was neglected in some way, then that would probably be something we would contact law enforcement and ask them to take a look at that. And they might refer that to Florida FWC as well. But any type of a criminal act, a neglect or an abuse of an animal, even if it's an exotic, would fall under a criminal investigation, not a code of ordinances.
All right, well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Finger.
Thank you. My question, I think, is mostly for Attorney Zimmett. Is that based on the speaker's suggestions and to commission, is that something we can go ahead and amend in this? Because it seems pretty logical. If I heard correctly, I think she said that the state is more restrictive than the USDA. So even though, we were just talking about that, but I think that that's what her desire was, including the state in our code would be actually would add an extra level and actually make it even more strict than what the USDA's requirements are. And seeing if, when we're talking about under this part about buying standards, approved and licensed, not just by the USDA, but I think is what adding about the state and also about the received direct violations, more clarification about that as well.
I'm sorry, what section are you talking about?
So under the buying standards,
Yeah.
which I have as page 6 of 7 of all of this section here, they're asking about the approved and licensed by. So buying standards, I have section under 1, all pet store owners shall only purchase dogs and or cats.
And D covers state violations, state law violations.
Right, but they want approved, not only licensed, as we were just discussing, Tracy, was that they're first approved and licensed by the USDA, and then the state, then the county, then they get to the store. What our speaker was saying is that actually having the details of including the state regulation, is that right? Saying that they're approved?
Yeah, please, go ahead. You'd have to come up to the microphone, though.
Thank you. I think their requests were, it
I believe what
sounded,
was suggested was that rather than not received any state law violations in the past 2 years, just have an active state license if applicable.
Yes, that's correct. So, my name's Amanda, sorry. What we were saying is that basically it wasn't very specific as to when it says state law violations, who are you talking about when you're talking about the state law violations? Us as the pet store in the state of Florida, or the breeders in their home state? If you're talking about the breeders in their home state, oh, sorry.
Talking about the breeders.
Okay, so if you're talking about the breeders in their home state, are we talking about just agriculture-related violations where it's just related to the animals? Or are we talking about they get a speeding ticket, or they get a fire inspection and they have a violation for a fire extinguisher not being operating? So we just wanted it to be a little bit more specific there if possible. What we're also stating is that every state has their own laws. So we would have to go through and bring every agriculture law related to professional dog breeders and have the city look at it and say, A, B, C, D, E, F, G would be allowed as a violation, X, Y, Z would not be allowed. That could get very, time consuming because, for instance, in the state of Kansas, they scale theirs on a 0 to 5 scale, 0 being not an issue, 5 being the most severe. Missouri is going to do it in a different way. So we were saying if they have a state license, just an active state license, they're basically meeting a criteria that already supersedes what the USDA has on their books. So by having that state license, you're already going above what the USDA is requiring because their state laws are already supersede that.
okay, that's what I thought I heard you say.
But they could have a state license and be in violation in that state, and then, I mean, that would kind of defeat the purpose, part of the purpose of the ordinance, is that those breeders, just because they have a state license doesn't mean they're not in violation of the state laws from where they're come from.
What we were mainly going after is like an active state license. So they would have, if it's active and it hasn't been revoked, then they are in compliance. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't get, just looking back at one that I saw, the breeder had a write-up for they wanted them to repaint the hinges on the kennels. So I personally don't take that as a reason why we wouldn't be able to work with that breeder if as long as they paint the hinges. So it was basically saying.
The state, though, feels that that's a violation of their law?
It's on the write-up, so yeah.
So, and I'm sorry to interrupt everybody here, but in my opinion, if it's a violation of whatever that state says, if it's Kansas or Missouri, then I would assume that they, for whatever reason, if it's a hinge or whatever it is, it's still a violation of their rules. So I'm assuming that would mean that they violated the rules there. So we would look at it from our standpoint of, okay, that they had a violation over the last 2 years of their state, so you wouldn't be able to work with that breeder.
That would be correct.
That's the way this reads.
That's the way it reads here.
That's the way it reads.
So my thought would be, I don't want to try to get involved in the state of Kansas's ordeal. They have their rules and their regulations as far as whatever they have to do with their breeders. And in my opinion, that's their deal. But it's a way too more complicated for us or for, our code enforcement to try to understand why they came up with the rules that they came up with. We should just abide by whatever they have. And if that's a violation in their state, then it's a violation, whether it's a minor or what you or I might consider to be a minor violation.
Right.
Still, for whatever reason, they did violate, the inspector found it to be in violation of their law.
Well, and that's why because they do give them a certain amount of time to correct that, so it's not necessarily going to be they're not going to revoke their license because of it. They're going to say, fix this, just like a restaurant that gets inspected and they have their dings and they say, fix this or we'll, pull it. So they're going to have a certain amount of time to correct the violation before it is revoked, their license is going to get revoked from them. So we were saying if they have a valid active license, they've obviously met the standard, and if there is anything that's coming up under their inspection reports, then they've done what they're supposed to do to correct it, or else their license would get taken away.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Along similar lines, I think that for us to determine whether or not a breeder that's listed on a placard has any state violations would be a lot more difficult than having an active state license for that breeder. So if our inspectors go in and they check these boxes, they're approved licensed by the USDA, they've not received any direct violations of the USDA, which is on the USDA site. They've not received more than 4 indirect on the USDA site again, and they have an active state license from the state that the breeder resides in. That's going to be way easier than determining whether or not they've received a state law violation in the past 2 years. You're going to have to go look for that because the store is not going to have a copy of, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So I think that it would make sense to require the breeder, the store here to have a copy of an active state license that's in good standing from the state that the breeder's in, rather than not received any state law violations in the past 2 years. Because some of the reasons that the lady explained, as well as ease of enforcement for our folks. Does that make sense, Mr. Zimmett?
Yeah, I understand what you're.
Yes.
Okay.
It's really more coming from Mr. Schofield than if that's.
I guess the question is, do we need to amend this and bring it back?
No, so the process, if the process would be to take a motion to amend the.
Yeah, we could amend it here.
Approve it on first reading, and then we'll make the changes and bring it back on second reading. What I was referring to Mr. Schofield was from an enforcement perspective. I don't know what his perspective is.
Well, certainly, and I have spoken with Amanda and the other owner of the other property, and this was brought up 2 days ago to us, and I did discuss this with legal yesterday. That one specifically, when it talks about has no state violations, is a difficult one for us to enforce. Right. If Kansas says that the hinges are rusty, or they might, while they're in there, decide to inspect the fire extinguisher, and it's expired by a week and says that's a violation. But does that really mean that the animal that we now have in the city of Largo is unhealthy or came from a puppy mill? I think that's a far stretch when we're trying to investigate these things and do that. And, some of these things, the regulations are and the ordinance is what it is, but there's going to have to be some common sense applied to when my inspectors are in there and talking to these business owners to see if this is almost a correctable violation. So I think we probably do want to tweak this a little bit so it makes it a little bit easier for my team to go out and take a look at things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the second item that was brought to us at public comment was the posting of basically the records above. And it was suggested that puppies chew things, which I think I have experienced that as well. So that seems to be the truth. So I think that somewhere between posting it on the kennel or on the cage or whatever it's the puppy's in and keeping it behind the desk in a notebook, I think if it could be posted within a reasonable proximity in clear view, because that's where you don't want to have to go in there and ask for it. You want the people that are shopping for the animal to be able to see it. But if the puppies are if there's a few puppies down here, they don't have to be on the cage. They could be up on a wall or something like that. So I think we could change that to within a reasonable proximity and within clear view. Kind of switch those words. Does that make?
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense to the commission?
Yes.
Which subsection are you referring to, Mayor?
I'm referring to page 6 of 7, section 2. It's about halfway down the page.
Okay.
The information required by B1 above shall be posted and maintained on each animal's cage, kennel, or enclosure, or within a reasonable proximity and in clear view. Something along those lines.
We could do that.
So replace and with or.
No, because I don't think they need to post it on the, because that would say that within clear view or in a reasonable proximity. I want it to be in clear view, but it doesn't have to be on the cage. It can be somewhere that's safe from puppies chewing on it.
I mean, like a wall.
Yeah, like a wall or ceiling. Somewhere that-
Right, so, but just replacing and with or would work in that situation.
I don't think it would, because that's after clear, the or is after clear view. So I would say enclosure or in a reasonable proximity thereof within clear view. So you don't want to say within clear view or within a reasonable proximity, because they could have it in a desk.
So maybe reversing that and just clean that up a little bit. We can take care of that.
Yeah. So Commissioner Carroll.
Yeah, I don't want to take this in a different direction, Tracy, but I know what we're trying to do here is ensure that retail sales of animals are humane and ethical and, in compliance. I get all that. But just looking, since the whole ordinance is open in front of us, I don't know where we got, if it's just old language or whatever, but when you talk about definitions and so forth, maybe we could take a second look at some of that. For example, animal, meaning all living beings except humans. So you could argue both sides of that equation, I guess, whether or not that's an accurate
And if you do remember, I think we threw out 3 or 4 definitions, because there is a lot of different definitions, and I brought another 4 or 5 with me today.
I don't want to, I was going to use a different analogy, but you probably can guess what it was. And I don't see anywhere in the ordinance addressing wildlife or pests like rats and those things when we're talking about an animal ordinance.
Right. We do have
Keep a
infestation.
squirrel or a wild rabbit or something like that.
Well, again, that would fall under the FWC, and they regulate anything to do. Most of the time, you're going to have a permit from the state of Florida to have any type of exotic squirrels, foxes, any of those non-domesticated animals. All falls under the Florida Freshwater or Fish and Wildlife Commission.
And what I'm thinking of is the patrol officer who gets dispatched out to a complaint that the person's keeping a coyote caged up on the property. Where do they go with that? So whatever you can do for me, to clean that up from a regulatory perspective,
Sure.
I'd appreciate.
I thought you were going to ask about the guy that shoots a rat off the fence with a pellet gun, because that's...
I wasn't going to say that. I've heard of that being done. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's going around checking to make sure that they're all female chickens and there's no rooster, but I see that in here too. So, like I say, I know what we're trying to do, and I applaud that, but when we have an ordinance in front of us, if there's an opportunity to clean
This is what we're here for.
Commissioner Smith.
Just recently in the news, there was the story that came out of unincorporated county. How will this be different than, like, if, let's say, they were in our bar? A lot of people think that store is in Largo. How would this have changed something like that?
I'm not familiar with that situation, sir.
They just had an issue just recently. I believe it was selling an animal that got sick and died a few days after they got it home. How would this prevent something like that if one of these other stores?
I don't know if it can prevent it, but I can tell you the state of Florida and the Department of Agriculture regulates that. And there's a certain amount of time, for lack of a better word, a lemon law statute that's in place that protects consumers if an animal dies within a certain amount of time, that they have some steps they can do through the Department of Agriculture to get some remedy for that. With that type of a situation, let's say that we did have a situation at one of the stores, we would then contact Pinellas County Animal Services that support us on that, to come in and do an inspection to help us to make sure this doesn't happen again. I mean, unfortunately, I'm assuming that we have had pets in a pet store that have passed away before they were sold, and it's not always because the store owners did something wrong. Sometimes animals get sick, sometimes things happen, and unfortunately, they might pass away. The question is, was it preventable? Can we prevent it from happening again? Is there something we could do to make it safer, better for the animals? I think that's where we would step in to try to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay.
So I've been in that business for 20 plus years, or had been in that business for 20 some years. Our ordinance wouldn't do anything to prevent the death of that animal.
No.
That animal was sick when it was sold, and probably was brought to that facility sick. So
I'm curious, like in this, like when we're talking about the documentation, do they have that? I don't know at Petland if what we're talking about on their cage or on the wall possibly, is that what they have right now, or are they providing documentation?
If that's the story you just mentioned, I've been in that store and I've not seen anything that they have posted on their property. I was in there and we were just in the beginning stages of this rewrite, and I asked them for some of the documentation that I knew that we were going to be asking for, and they provided something that for a dog that hadn't even been born yet. So I reported that to the Pinellas County Animal Services because that was the right place to go with that.
Okay.
And so Pinellas County, again, they're the ones, that's part of their preemptive responsibilities, and they're pretty strict about maintaining their authority over that. Okay. And that was the reason why we submitted our language to them, to make sure they were okay with it.
And also, in the legislation, the session coming up, Representative Kilborough is introducing House Bill 45 that's basically going to eliminate. Are we keeping an eye on that? Because basically, if it passes, from what I got, was they're banning pet stores from selling cats and dogs.
It's my understanding it's not the first time it's been presented. I think it might have been presented last session and maybe died in session.
Yeah, he has co-sponsors on this.
I'd have to speak with Ms. Reed, and, from our governmental legislation, and see if she's monitoring that, and if not, ask her to.
Okay. I would say keep an eye on it just in
Yes,
case.
sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question about something unrelated to what we've been talking about, kind of. But in the definitions, it says for fowl, any bird kept for its eggs or flesh, fowl may include but are not limited to chickens, turkey, duck, goose, quail, pheasant, pigeons, and guinea fowl. And then in section 6, it says an exception to this code allows for the keeping of up to 12 female chickens, hen, in a single residence, and it goes on. But it doesn't say anything about keeping those other fowl. So can somebody have one of those other fowl or 6 of those other fowl for the purpose of eggs, or?
Currently, no, sir, not right now.
Not the way this is written?
No, sir.
So do you know if there's, I know that there's people that have some of the birds other than chickens on this list that are pets, and they get eggs from them in their backyards in the city of Largo. So have we had any complaints where you've investigated anything like that?
Only about roosters.
About roosters, right?
That's the complaint we get on a fairly regular basis.
apparently they don't have guinea hens then. 'Cause you'd be
A little loud. Yeah.
They don't have guinea hens.
Peacocks.
They don't have peacocks. We're narrowing it down. It's not me.
Turkeys? Shoot a rat off the fence.
But
And certainly, if that's something where we need to change 6, and instead of allowing for the female chickens, is it, female hens, female fowls, if they're breeding for eggs, that's something we can address if you'd like to do that.
I mean, I don't like to write an ordinance that I think that somebody is violating without any problems at all, any of their neighbors or anything like that now, and they're doing it so they can have fresh eggs. So I don't know if we haven't heard from anybody that has anything other than chickens in their yards, but I know that there are some folks that fit in that category that might have a couple ducks for eggs or something like that. So I don't know how we would get there. I don't know what guinea fowl are like if you have them.
They're loud.
Okay, well, maybe we don't want to include guinea fowl. But I heard somebody had some turkeys, too.
There are, I'm sure there are in the city somewhere.
Ostriches?
I'll tell you what, emu eggs are good. Completely
that in
unrelated
mind.
to everything we've been talking about, so.
So I would recommend that we make a couple amendments, if possible. The one, I would say, rather than have not received any state violations, change that to have an active state license. And then secondarily, change the wording on that other one so that the posting can be somewhere other than the kennel. Commissioner Gerard, did you have something as well?
Just a question that came up during this conversation here. What is there a regulation as far as a veterinary examination of the puppies as they come in, so we know that they came in and they're in good health at the time that they arrive? I see nodding heads in the back.
But both of our facilities that we have in the city both have medical professionals either on call or on staff. I met one of them at one of my visits there, so they do have their own vets that are taking care of these animals to make sure they're safe. Because even though the USDA says yes on this animal or on this facility, and then it gets shipped 6 months later or 3 months later, and it makes it somehow healthy through Department of Ag, there might be some health issues when it comes to our stores. So that's why they have their staff in place to make sure, and I'm sure that they coordinate that with their breeders to either send them back or get them healthy to a point where they then can sell them to the public. They probably have a decision point at some point if they determine because they're buying these from a breeder, so either they have to make a choice of this dog or cat doesn't meet our standards, we're going to need to send it back because of its health issues, or we've been able to successfully make it healthy per our vet, and now we're going to be able to sell it.
That's not by regulation, that's just by practice, right?
Yes, sir.
By the store's practice. Nobody's required to do that.
Again, I'd have to defer to the store, honestly, for that.
Alexandria Julian. So right now it is required by the state that, and the breeder states that they have to get a health certificate before they're shipped. The state of Florida also requires that they get a physical and a fecal and all that comes clear before they're shipped in. Once they come to us, it's required by us by 828.29 as well that we get a follow-up examination with a fecal and a physical. As long as all that is good, then the puppy is able to be put up for sale.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other question? As far as the birds other than chickens, we could amend that on second reading without nullifying the first reading, is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, and I'd like to get with Mr. Schofield on that section because the more I read it, the more I'm not sure it says what he thinks it says.
Okay, I'm with you, so that'd be great.
Can I just recap then the proposed amendments so that somebody can make a motion?
I'll recap it, but I can't make a motion.
Right, so I was going to just actually read the language that I thought we wanted to.
Okay, that'd be great.
So the proposed amendments would be to subsection, let me get the full number here. It's in section 12 of the ordinance, section 5-34 of the code, subsection 1, B1D. It would be amended to read that to require the breeder to have an active state license in good standing. And then in subsection 2, right under that, the language will be changed to read, the information required by subsection B1 above shall be posted and maintained on each animal's cage, kennel, enclosure, or in reasonable proximity thereof, comma, all within clear view, period. And so if somebody could make a motion to amend the ordinance, you can.
I move to amend ordinance number 2021-31.
As stated?
As stated.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to amend the ordinance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Commissioner Smith, did you have a question?
No, just more comment. I'm voting no only because I don't believe in shopping. I believe in adoption. I'm for this and I understand it, but that's where I stand, so that's why I'm voting no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
And
holidays.
that was just to amend the motion, so I need a motion, or amend the ordinance. I would need a motion to pass the ordinance as amended.
I move to approve ordinance number 2021-31 on first reading and schedule a second reading and public hearing on January 19th, 2021.
Second.
And that was as amended.
As amended. Yeah.
As amended.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. I will now recess the City Commission meeting and convene the Community Redevelopment Agency meeting for a couple items. Item number 25.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. The purpose of this item is to present an amendment to the purchase and sales agreement for 511 Cleveland Avenue Southwest. On November 17th, 2020, the Community Redevelopment Agency approved the residential contract for the sale and purchase of the property. The closing date was originally scheduled for November 20th, 2020. And during the presentation on the agenda item, staff provided the board an update that the property would not be closing on the scheduled date of November 20th due to the delayed receipt of the closing documents received earlier in the day. The city attorney's office determined that an extension to the closing date required approval by the board, and this was communicated to the buyer, and the extension addendum extends the closing date to on or before December 21st, 2020. Do the commissioners have any questions at this time?
Do we have any community input on this?
I have none.
Thank you. Any questions?
I move to approve the extension addendum to the as-is residential contract for the sale and purchase of 511 Cleveland Avenue Southwest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item number 26.
Yes, thank you. At the November 17, 2020 Community Redevelopment Agency meeting, the board approved a first amended lease agreement for the residential property at 166 5th Street Northwest, and the lease would begin on January 1st, 2021. However, on December 1st, 2020, the tenant contacted the redevelopment agency to request early termination of the existing lease and to provide notice that they would be vacating the premises on December 20th to move out of state. Under the existing lease, however, the tenant does not have an option for early termination, and any amendments to the existing lease require board approval. Therefore, early termination of the lease can only be accepted through an action by the board. And once the tenant has vacated the premises, staff will have the items of value removed, secure the building, and will proceed with plans for demolition of the property to prepare for a future redevelopment opportunity. And staff will consider redevelopment opportunities to bring back for discussion for the board. Staff is available to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
I have no public comment.
Any questions from the commission?
I move to approve the tenant's early termination of the residential lease for 166 5th Street Northwest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Very much.
The CRA meeting is now adjourned, and will reconvene as the City Commission for items from the dais. Mr. Zimmett.
Just say happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you. Commissioner Carroll.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. This is our last commission meeting of 2020, so therefore 2020 is hindsight.
Man, I can't
Hindsight
wait.
is 2020.
Good. Yeah.
It's got to get better, right?
Man. Commissioner Smith.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fenger.
Thank you to the Kiwanis for their donation this evening, and congratulations to all employees of the quarter. Always enjoy hearing their stories. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gerard.
First of all, happy holidays to everyone. Please have a safe and joyful holiday. I was particularly excited tonight about all the actions for the Tri-City Special Area Plan. That's going to be a marvelous project for the city, and I'm really excited to see that coming out of the ground I know it's going to take a while. I went by the Rosary Apartments over the weekend just to check them out because, we're so excited about that. And I actually met a family that was moving in, and they were overjoyed. Came down from Washington, D.C., and why wouldn't you be happy about coming there? But the apartments are really very, very pretty, and I can just see that this is going to be also a wonderful project in the city. And I got to drive one of the new hybrid cruisers today, so that was exciting, too. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Robinson.
Yeah, just happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone. Also to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Finger, it's very nice to see all the employees of the quarter presentations today. There was a couple of them that were really, talking about people. Some of our employees were keeping people in their houses, which, that's just life altering for every one of those folks. So I just really want to say thank you to them, and we'll hopefully see you guys in 2021, and we'll be moving in the right direction and have that light at the end of the tunnel now. So thank you.
Or if there's something coming up, maybe.
Yeah, I think the mayor wanted to talk about that.
Well, either way.
Go ahead. It's not in my notes. So.
I've repeated again. All right, Commissioner Hulk.
Just also echo on Kiwanis, thank you for all that you do, and the employees of the quarter, congratulations. Great way to end the year. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and everybody please have a safe and healthy new year, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you. I wanted to wish everybody at home as well as everybody up here Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays, and hope that y'all are safe and have some type of fun, even though it's kind of crazy this year over the holidays. I wanted to mention, in speaking about fun, we're having an old-fashioned Christmas parade in downtown Largo. It's on this Saturday at noon. If you're at Ulmer Park, you'll be able to find us. Go to Facebook and look up Largo Christmas Parade, and you'll find it as well if you have any questions. It will be streaming live. If you're in a susceptible population and you don't want to come out to the parade in person and wear a mask, you can stay at home and watch it on Facebook Live just by going to Facebook. So I also wanted to share this note that I got in the mail today that was addressed to me, and I gave the check to Mr. Schubert. But I wanted to tell you, it's just a handwritten note. It says, Dear Mayor Brown, I'm so impressed with the beautiful holiday display at Largo Central Park. It's quite calm. Its quiet calm is just mesmerizing, something so nice and so needed at this time. I feel like everyone involved put their hearts into it. I'm enclosing a $100 donation towards this effort. May it continue. May you all enjoy a safe and healthy holiday season. Respectfully, Ruth Ritter, from Seminole. So she's from our neighbor to the south, but she came up and enjoyed our lights and wanted to contribute to the costs. And it was such a nice letter. And I know it says that it's addressed to me, but it's addressed to all of us, I think.
That's
so
great. Fantastic.
So especially John. I'm just kidding.
It's electric.
Mr. Schubert, do you have anything?
Yes, keeping up with the holiday theme, I'm happy to report that, with one exception, all of the holiday decorations in the downtown are now illuminated. So the contractor has fixed all of them but one, and he'll be out there tomorrow to hopefully fix the last remaining one.
Our city Christmas present.
Very good. Action items.
I did not have any. Did I miss any?
No, Merry Christmas. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Diane, thank you for another wonderful year, too.
Thank you, Diane.